Let's understand a mixed formula, a relative formula, and an absolute formula. With this example, this table shows items sold, item, unit price, quantity, sales tax, line total. These are item names, easy to understand. Unit price means the cost of each unit. If, for instance, this first item, beef, costs $5.65 each. If you take 8, that is 8 kilograms of beef, the total you'll pay for the beef without the tax will be this unit price multiplied by the quantity. But since every commodity sold has a sales tax, the total paid should include the sales tax. So we are going to use these two, sales tax and line total, to understand a relative formula, an absolute formula, and a mixed formula. Let's begin with sales tax. Sales tax is the tax paid per total sales. If a quantity of products is sold, there is a percentage of tax calculated using a tax rate. The tax rate in this example is stored in E1, and this tax rate remains constant for all these products. How is sales tax calculated? Sales tax is calculated as this tax rate multiplied by the total cost. In this case, the total cost is equal to the unit price multiplied by the quantity bought or quantity sold. So the total you get here is what is multiplied by the sales tax. So is what is multiplied by the tax rate to get the sales tax. Let's do it. It's equal to tax rate multiplied by the unit price. Let's put the multiplication inside, multiplied by the unit price, but the unit price is also multiplied by the quantity, so that whatever is in the bracket now is the total cost, which is multiplied by the tax rate to get the sales tax. When you press enter, this is the tax rate. What we are interested in is knowing the formula which led us to this. You click on this cell and you look at this formula. This formula shows E1 multiplied by B3 multiplied by C3. These are in brackets. Which type of formula is this? If we leave it like this, or by just the look of it, it is a relative formula. But what makes it relative in this case? Nothing. So you need to get to know what a relative formula is. It will only be relative or absolute or mixed if it can be applied to others. A previous video or a certain video I made was about using the fill handle, this handle. So if we want to calculate the sales tax for each of the items we have here, we don't need to write the formula here again. We have to fill this formula using this fill handle downwards up to the end. But you see, this is wrong now. Reason being, the type of formula used is either non-formatted well and there is something lacking. Part of this formula is not supposed to change. Let's take a look at this formula. Why do you think it's wrong? This is impossible. We cannot have zeros here. We cannot have this error if it's a correct formula. Let's click on this error. Ignore this error unless if you understand what it says, but it's what I'm going to explain briefly. The reason as to why we have wrong values here is, remember, the tax rate does not change, but the unit price and quantity changes. That's why in the first place, cell D3 had a formula which gave us a corrective value equal to E1 multiplied by B3 multiplied by C3. But when you go to the next one, which is giving us a wrong value, it is saying equal to E2. Now where is E2? E2 is here. Are you seeing E2? E2 has a word line total. That is the first error. Let's continue. Multiply by B4. B4 would be fine and C4 would be fine. So what shouldn't change in this formula? All these formulas here, what should not change is the tax rate. The tax rate should remain constant. So we should show this in our formula so that when we fill it downwards, it does not cause this error. How can we do that? We change that part of the formula to be absolute. And how do we do that? We'll go back to our first formula we wrote. We check the part which is supposed to be constant. B3 is not supposed to be constant because when we go here, B3 should become B4 so that we calculate for the next item. C3 should not be constant because the quantity keeps on changing. E1 should be constant because it is the tax rate for all the products. What do we do for that? So for this formula, we are supposed to edit it. You can edit it from the formula bar or you can edit it right here. So in this case, let me delete it. So we are supposed to write it's equal to E1. This is now what we are going to make constant. How do we make it constant? That's where I'm coming. In order to make it constant, you say equal to, you precede them with a dollar sign, equal to dollar sign E dollar sign 1. This means E1, but it's E1. It has been made constant. Multiply by, now you put on you put these other cells which are not supposed to be constant. B3 multiply by C3, and then we close the brackets. Which part of this formula is absolute? It is E1. Actually, we do not read the dollar signs. We read it as E1, but since we understand it now, this is an absolute part of the formula. B3 is not absolute. It's relative because it will keep on changing. C3 is not absolute. It's relative because it will keep on changing. When we press enter, still we will get the other figure as usual. Why did we use now the absolute part of the formula? It's because we want to use the fill handle here. Now we can fill this formula using this fill handle downwards and we don't get any problem. Actually, you'll see that no error comes in. When you click on the second item to see the sales tax, it is 1.5. The formula retained E1 remained E1, but these two cells changed, B4, C4. The previous one was B3, C3, but still E1. Because we made it absolute, go to any other, you still see that the others change, B5, C5, but the absolute part remains E1. That is the meaning of an absolute formula. Used to calculate bank rates, used to calculate so many things. Yeah, this is general knowledge you need. And lastly, the line total. Now you know an absolute formula, you know a mixed formula. Actually what we had here is a mixed formula. Part of it is absolute, which is this first part, the one which has E1. This part I'm highlighting is absolute. The others are not absolute. The others are not absolute. Yeah, they are called relative. Yeah, so this is an absolute formula. this is a mixed formula. It has a part of absolute and a part of relative. Line total. How do we get the total? I told you the total paid for this item now is supposed to include the sales tax. Now the line total should get all this together, and it should be unit price multiplied by quantity plus the sales tax. So we shall say equal to unit price multiplied by the quantity, which is in C3, plus the sales tax, which is in this cell I'm selecting, D3. We don't need any of these to be absolute. Reason being, if we go to the next cell, we shall need B4, C4, D4. When we go to the other one, the subsequent one will be B5, C5, D5. So none of these is supposed to be absolute. So the whole formula is a relative formula, and we press enter. It means this is the total cost for 8 kilograms of beef, including the sales tax calculated together. Now we can fill this formula downwards, and since it's a relative formula, it will do the magic automatically. When you click on the second one, you'll see it is B4 times C4 plus D4. The next one has B5 times C5 plus D5. I think now you can see the difference. All this formula is relative, but the other previous one had a part of relative and a part of absolute. The absolute is the one preceded by dollar signs. The relative is the one which is not preceded by dollar signs. If they are used together, this becomes a mixed formula. So this is a mixed formula. I think that can explain a number of these formulas.